Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. We didn't see the property, but we made an embarrassing offer. I'm going to talk a lot more about embarrassing offers. Insulting offers, some of you will think of. They're asking $5 million, you offer $500,000. Now, to me, that's not an insulting offer, but to most people, it would be an insulting offer. It's not dissimilar to me starting at one end of the bar until I come down to Cutie Pie here. She's the 11th, and she says, yes, let's fuck in the toilet. It's no different. So I've just moved my expertise to companies, but these guys have tripled this particular deal since he came to the seminar. Tripled his business, and see, he's added on to his business. So his first deal was him, and then he's made, I don't know, 12 or 14 or something like that. It's hard to keep track of all these guys. But when you get out there, the first few times, because you're going to be nervous, first few times, but you're not there to explain. You're not there to make the banker your lover or anything like that. If you can explain in 2 or 3 sentences, fine. If not, next. In London or in the UK, there's 650 banks. If you ask a farmer or a high school student, not high school student, a college student, how many banks, they'll say they're the 6 clearing banks. Because they're the ones that are on the street corners, Lloyd's, HSBC, etc. But there's 650 banks here that will do deals with you. In America, I stopped counting at 2,000. 2,000 banks. Now, probably in this room, you couldn't name 30 of them, 20 of them maybe. But there's probably over now, 2,000 banks. So there's no shortage. And the other thing we're going to talk about this morning is commercial banks are not our only conduit. Insurance companies, pension funds, and I'm not talking about the private equity arm or of the various banks. Bank of America has a private equity. Almost all the banks have some form of private equity. It may not be called Bank of America Private Equity, but they own or control 3 or 4 private equity firms. Some of the big banks also have hedge fund extensions. So just because you call Bank of America and Bank of Chicago, but when they say no, you haven't called enough people. In fact, I used to have a automatic answer that you haven't called enough. I don't have to listen to your challenge, your problem. You haven't called enough. And when we started doing stuff with kids, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, they would come out and say, my results were directly related to my output. I never heard that from a man, a grown-up though. Only a kid, you know. If I made 100 calls, I got more results than if I only made 20 calls. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. But you don't want to hear that. Not you, but adults, grown-ups don't want to hear that because that means they're going to have to, one, they failed at what they were doing short term, and 2, they're going to have to work harder. But this is an output business, just like the outcomes of Netflix and Siemens. Fine, you can stay in Miami, you can stay in Mallorca, you can stay in Moscow. But on March 31st, at the close of business, you'll have $45 million in revenue or you are unemployed. Period. Your mother died in your arms. That's tragic, but $45 million is still due. And that's what we're moving towards. Because again, we have no accountability. We can't make them. You can intimidate employees. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. When I ran a call center, they used to call it a bucket shop back in the 70s. And I sat on a thing, it's not dissimilar to this, and we had 200 or 300 seats like this, much closer together. And they had just started with, what do you call it, the things on your head, the phones, where you can just wear the little phone piece. I wouldn't allow those. I wanted the old-fashioned phone. And I used to ask you, what hand do you wipe your butt with? I beg your pardon. Whatever hand that was, if you were lefty, unlike me, I took the phone and I took masking tape. You know, that silver-colored masking tape? And I tape it to your hand, the phone to your hand. And if when I was I think I was a little higher. If I didn't see the shining of the motherfucking lights on the masking tape on that hand of yours, boom! Like the Flash, I'm on you. You used to have to ask permission to go to the back potty. I didn't give smoke breaks. Of course, you could smoke in the buildings in those days. But some of the people, if you smoked and you guys didn't smoke, you would unsmoke him. You would convince him that smoking wasn't a smart thing. But there was a mist of smoke, about 10 feet over the air because a lot of people smoked in those days. But now, what the kids don't understand, since they're going to start working from home, they're going to be given numbers that they come up with beyond stretch goals. And they're going to complain. We haven't been in this arena long enough for them to bitch. But part of them, all these resignations, is that. How much can you do a month? Oh, fuck, I ought to be 50, sales of some sort. 50 grand a month. Okay, your quota is 60. The outcome better be 60. And you better reconsider that number when we ask you again, because you're going to have chargebacks. Most salesmen don't consider chargebacks when they're giving you what they think they can do. I always used to double mine. If I thought I could do $1 million a month, I said I'll do $2 million a month. Remember, I don't want any backup plans. So the idea of, from the last slide, these guys have put themselves on or this guy has put himself on a outcome, and all their sales forces. And again, when you use the weekly report, and there's 5 sections of the weekly report. What did you do last week? What are you doing this week? And you can do this on a daily basis. And what are your challenges? And your challenge isn't the fact that your daughter had her first period, that kind of bullshit. I mean, what has kept you? And if you list that, then that's not an acceptable answer. And when you give those kinds of questions and you demand answers from your employees, forget how I showed you to hire people and then you can fire them. You won't have to. They'll quit. Yes, sir.
If you demand a lot from your top 3 people that report to you, will they just do the rest? Will they expect the same from the people below them? It's kind of like a top
No.
10.
You have to do it once, as they say in Texas, to show them. Because if you leave them to their own devices, their standards, unless it's an anomaly, unless you got somebody like me, they will have lower standards. Because you're giving them high standards, and they'll unknowingly, because they haven't gone through this or managed through a challenge like this, they will unknowingly give their people, their reports, the benefit of the doubt when they don't deserve it. Most managers, young junior managers, give the benefit of the doubt based on what they think they can do. But their people, their junior manager, may be ahead of the curve because they performed. But without performance, back it up, you give as much praise as you can that's deserved. Right now, they say, oh, good job, because he met his quota. What's so fucking good about that? Because the results that people get in management now are so piss poor if you just meet their quota. And almost all managers operate high case, middle case, low case. They say to themselves, I'm fucking lucky that they met low case. Because there's no standards. There's no standards. Now, when you go to Salesforce, for example, we tried to hire the entire office of Salesforce in Manila many years ago. And the guy that they had running the office was a fucking terror. And he was going through people like shit through a goose. Cat and EJ are the remnants of 1,511 employees. 1,511. And there's, let's see, Velma, Alwyn, right? And you. Is that right? 5? Am I missing somebody? Oh, okay. 6 out of 1,511. I don't know what they called me behind my back, but I know what they called me in front of my face. And we were the subject of a TV sting program called, what was the name of the program? Ambush, where they would ambush politicians taking money and shit like that. And allegedly, I laid off several hundred people on Christmas Eve. Now that didn't happen. It was December 7th. It wasn't Christmas Eve, but now the story many, many years later is, and then all kinds of bad things. With babies, weren't able to be fed and bullshit like that. And then they attacked our office. Trying to, and they chased us down the streets and shit. I loved it. Sally didn't like that. She didn't like it. Because now if you touch me, then I can hit you. And obviously when there's 50 people chasing you, now I can turn around and belt a few. But we had high standards. Now, if you have reports, your reports are going to be the first to go, contrary to what you believe. If you implement this stuff, if you give them the report, some of your direct reports, your own relatives will quit. Because what you're indicating or what you're telegraphing is the gravy train is over unless you really perform. The gravy train is over. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to high turnover in the initial stages is normal. If you're not getting high turnover, one of two things. Either by the grace of Allah, you have super high-performing people that report to you, which I know isn't the case, and or two, your standards aren't high enough. You're not requiring them to do enough. Now, this young man that had his birthday a couple of days ago, his father manages like I used to. He hits employees, right? Like the good old days. I get a twitch in my dick just thinking about that. And he said, do I have a picture or something of the guy who threw down the staircase? I wish I had. But this was before everybody had a fucking phone. But, and it's awful. It's inhumane. But do you want to be Steve Jobs or not? Last night, I know who you saw. My virtual mentor, Andrew. All 4'8" of him. What are you smiling about? And you saw what he did. Feedback from my mentor. What'd you think about him? Yep.
Well, he was a personification of ruthless. Like, he literally killed people, like you said.
You might be right about that. Maybe that's why, as you mentioned, that's why he didn't get any fucking medals from the Queen. He was tough. I'm not recommending that style to you, but I am recommending, if the scale, let's say this is tough. No, this is ruthless. People dying. And this is, we'll just assume that nuns and people of the cloth, which is not true necessarily, are at the other end, okay? And right now you're about here, and I'm an inch from killing people, okay? If you move over 10%, you'll be a billionaire. 10%. It's the magic 10%. It's the hardest 10%. It's the most tasteful to you 10%, but it works. It's the Attila the Hun 10% for you Asians. It's, it's Genghis Khan. Yes, thank you. Okay. It's the Genghis Khan end. It's the Mao Zedong end. But it works. There's no question that Genghis Khan was successful, right? Nobody has to write white papers about it, right? He conquered half or 2/3 or 1/3 of what was considered the world at that time. And he was not a church-going kind of guy. What else about Andrew? Yes, sir.
He put down the strike like a rebellion. First, he tried to negotiate peacefully. Then he laid a siege, and then he sent in Pinkerton.
Now, the joke or the irony when he tried to put down negotiated. Let's say he was paying him $1. They wanted $1.50. He offered him $1.01. That was his negotiation. It wasn't like he wanted it to come to fruition. So, but in the history books, and that's maybe the only nice thing that he did, nice being not the right word, but it's like, well, my experience with the miners in the unions was similar. Man, unfortunately, and I had nothing to do with the guys getting killed in the crusher and the great feats of athleticism, jumping 17 feet with your hands and feet tied behind you. But that's how they handle it. And unions have gone from about 8 or 9 million in the United States in unions down to about 2.1 or 2.2. Because unions do not serve the same purpose as it did when the Carnegies of this world, the Rockefellers of the world are taking advantage of them. What else about Mr. Carnegie?
His mother was demanding, ruthless, since she got to be a bit more out.
And she wanted to go back and ride in the carriage and look down at everybody because when they went out of business, you can see that very house if you go to Dunford Manor, where he's from, about 40 miles from here. And everything, not everything, but almost everything has his name on it because they came back and fixed the town up. And some of you, I told you what drives me is, wanting my dad to think good of me. Various of you in this room are driven by different things. An ex-wife that said you were a fucking bum, you were worthless. Something you did as a child. Trying to prove yourself to your grandfather, who was the only guy that had any balls in the country. But there's a different reason. But everybody in this room is marching to the beat of a different drummer. And I don't care, as long as it's moral, ethical, and legal, and morals and ethics swing in the wind. As long as it's legal, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. And there'll be places, and I told you, if it doesn't have a rule of law, you're pissing in the wind. Unless you're willing to kill people and, play super hardball. And I'm not recommending that to anybody in the room. Although I've had some kids that play that way. Play is not the operative word, that operate that way. Remember, QLA is a mafia model without a gun. If you use a gun, you're really giving them an opportunity that they can't refuse. And if you sell this right, they won't refuse. Because you are doing them, and for those of you that are on the goody two-shoes end of the continuum, well, they're only out. I'm their only succession plan. I'm doing it right by them. Well, fine, which is all true, but that's not what drives the model. Unfortunately, fear drives the model because they're fearful that after 20, 30, 40 years, they're going to wind up with nothing. That's what drives the model. And if they do 100% seller finance, why in God's name would they allow you to buy their own business with their own money? It's one of the wonders of the world. And any sophisticated Wharton man would say this is not possible. This is not possible. We had a couple of MIT guys here a few years ago. We came to this seminar, Mr. Peña, just to find where the Achilles heel is, the trick. Where's the trick fuck in this deal? They went to Sloan School at MIT, and the day before the last day, we were sitting, they were close to me at dinner. They said, "Are you going to tell us what the trick is before we leave?" I said, "What are you talking about?" I mean, we paid the money. I mean, aren't you going to tell us? There is no trick, kids. We have some people just, that don't believe that this is possible. And in a normal world, and we don't operate in a normal world, this wouldn't be possible. Anything else about Carnegie? Yeah.
Frick CEO
Yeah.
was like close, like Steve Ballmer. They work like similar enthusiasm.
Isn't he the guy that asked Carnegie for help and then Carnegie told him to fuck off? Yeah. Oh, no, that's the other. Okay. Andrew was on board and he pulled up the Gangplank. The part that not amuses me, but shows me the character of the guy is, or the lack thereof, is when he bought his way, and I'm not sure if it's in that movie, he bought his way out of the draft for $700 or $800, which was a lot of money back then. And then the kid got killed that took his place in the draft. Donald Trump had 7 deferments. He's not the only guy that had 7 deferments, but he had 7 deferments. Somebody else had their hand up. Yes, sir.
One observation about his CEO. So his CEO got shot in the head and did surgery without anesthesia, continued to work the whole day and didn't give a shit about if he died or not.
I can relate to that, but not many people can. Some people think that's barbaric. I think it's got balls. The surgeries we've got on my bionic man post in social media, I only had minimal anesthetic for my knees, for my hip, all those, because I wanted to feel it. But the creepiest part is when they were sawing my knees, they said my eyes are rolling around in my head, and you can feel the vibration. That's the closest I came to being scared. Because what if he slipped through the saw? You're fucked. Now, the guy that did my knees did the Queen of England's knees and the Queen Mother's knees, her mother's knees. I went to the best guy on the planet. The guy that did my hip was the royal surgeon that did the Queen Mother's hip, okay? So I want him to be bald, gray, and I want me to be the 25,000th time they did it, not the 4th time they did it. I don't know how big-time surgeons get started. Who wants to be the first patient? Now, I have a dentist guy, he's retired now, I think, because the patients used to ask back in the 60s and 70s, is this your first rodeo? Well, that's fine. Well, you go over to that guy then if this is your first time. But, okay, any last comments about, yes, ma'am?
You could have asked more for his steel company when he sold it to Morgan.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He had seller's remorse in later years. Because J.P. Morgan told him, words to the effect, I would have paid virtually anything. And he had seller's remorse. And part of the reason in theory, I don't know this for a fact, it's certainly not told by historians, that he tried to give all his money away. And it's not that easy to give. He would give money and it would make a lot of money and they give it back to him back and forth. Is to make up for his sins, that a lot of the things he did. But he was truly a guy that did whatever it took. And there's modern day guys like that will do whatever it takes. You don't have to be like that. You can be 6 inches away from Mao Zedong, but you got to be away from where you are now. And it's a counterculture. But the Russians get this. The Russians love the model. Just an average fucking Ruski walking down the street will do whatever it takes. You don't have to convince them. Do I have to kill anybody? No. Fuck. When do we go? When do we start? Some of the Ruskies will kill somebody. And here, I've got to convince you. Anything else? Okay, YouTube. Goodbye.